So when President Trump has been saying that he is up against not just Joe Biden, but also up against social media and big tech and the media, he is not lying. The latest indicator of a media that does not wish to cover stories it does not wish to cover is what's happening in Philadelphia. So you've had massive rioting over the past 3 nights over the shooting of Walter Wallace. Okay, Walter Wallace is being portrayed by Democrats as a very nice guy, a very, very nice guy. Here's Bernie Sanders' tweet on Walter Wallace. So Bernie tweeted out, Walter Wallace would be alive today, and our thoughts are with his loved ones. The police responsible for murdering him in front of his mother, instead of getting him the medical attention he needed, should be arrested, investigated, and prosecuted by the Justice Department. Okay, so Bernie Sanders says this guy was murdered. Murdered, like in cold blood. Like they should be prosecuted federally by the Justice Department, says Bernie McSanders. Okay, there's only one problem. He was holding a knife. They told him to put down the knife many times. He was within 10 feet of them. He kept approaching them. They shot him. Also, it turns out that Walter Wallace was not the world's nicest man. I know that we have this duty every time a black man is killed by the police to portray that black man as the font of all good, innocence, and wonder. We got this with Jacob Blake, who it turns out was an alleged rapist. We got this with George Floyd, and it turns out that George Floyd literally held a gun to the stomach of a pregnant woman a few years prior. So that does not mean that what happened to George Floyd should have happened to George Floyd. It does mean that it does not require you to treat people who are shot by the police or killed by the police or die in police custody as wonderful, wonderful people in order to make your point about police brutality with regard to George Floyd. It certainly means in the case of Jacob Blake that, the Democratic candidates calling up Jacob Blake personally to offer their condolences to him on being shot after he resisted arrest, went for a knife in his car, and had been called to the scene by a woman who alleged rape against him previously. It makes for a weird narrative. Well, it turns out that Walter Wallace was not world's nicest human being. According to 6abc.com, right, local news covering this, Wallace was an aspiring rapper with social media accounts filled with videos. Well, that sounds nice, doesn't it? Yeah. Guns are a central theme as he rhymes about shooting people, including police. But his videos also include songs about social causes and police injustice. See, this has always been weird to me. If you cut a song about how you're shooting the police, and then you're like, but the police are mean to me, I feel like the police might have a reason to be mean with you if you're talking literally about how you want to shoot them and murder them. In any case, it's not just about his rap, obviously. People rap about a variety of topics. Many of them rap fictionally. Walter Wallace has a criminal record. Court records show Wallace was currently awaiting trial for allegedly threatening to shoot a woman and her house up. In 2017, he pled guilty to robbery, assault, and possessing an instrument of crime after kicking down the door of another woman and putting a gun to her head. He was sentenced to 11 to 23 months behind bars. In 2013, he pled guilty to assault and resisting arrest after punching a police officer in the face. So, yeah, that's not great. That's not great, Bob. Okay, but all of this resulted in massive riots in Philadelphia. And our media covered it in exactly the way you have become accustomed to our media covering riots. They decided to downplay it, pretend that it was the looting was the language of the oppressed. When you're that oppressed, like in Philadelphia, where Democrats have been in charge for almost literally ever, well, that means that you're oppressed enough that you got to steal a TV. So New York Reporter tweeted out, New York Times reporter tweeted out, why are we even covering this? Eric Lipton, watching my Twitter feed since last night. Very notable, the intensity of tweets from conservative voices looking to amplify, draw attention to looting in Philadelphia. Yes, it happened. New York Times covered it as well. Just remarkable how conservatives want to elevate it. I feel like it's more remarkable how the media want to downplay it. Massive riots in which 1,000 people loot a Walmart after the justified shooting of a person trying to attack police with a knife. It seems to me like that should be more newsworthy than the top story that the New York Times and everybody else was covering yesterday, which was Trump held a rally in Omaha and the transportation was not good, and some old people were stuck in the cold. That was literally the top story on Twitter all day yesterday, all day. Right, so there's massive rioting, which is an act of mass criminality in Philadelphia, and the local authorities look the other way or cater to it. That's not a story. It's a story that the transportation plans in Omaha were not very good. Huge break. Yes, don't worry. There is no media bias, Virginia. There's no media bias whatsoever. And then there's the idiots like Wolf Blitzer. My favorite is when Joe Biden talking points just sort of wander their way in via the media. So here's Wolf Blitzer saying, I don't understand why the Philadelphia officers didn't just shoot to wound. The reason you don't shoot to wound, idiot, is because you're not that good with a gun. No one is that good with a gun. Nobody is Jack Bauer. Other reasons. You shoot for center of mass because if you shoot to wound, there's a better shot that you miss and hit an innocent bystander. There are many reasons to shoot. Other reasons to shoot, not to wound. Because sometimes you wound the person and they keep coming after you. Let's say they shot this guy in the leg and he is now within 3 feet of them with a knife because he's approaching them. Is that going to work out well? I think not. But here's Wolf Blitzer being a complete dunderhead because this is what we do in the media now.
Walter Wallace had a knife, as we saw. One witness said, though, he had mental health issues. The district attorney said a report this was a medical call, was consistent with what they know so far. So could these officers have escalated the situation? If they obviously could have used tasers if they had tasers, but they didn't have tasers. But why shoot to kill as opposed to shoot to injure and just prevent anything from going further?
Okay, because you're an idiot, Wolf Blitzer. I mean, the answer is because that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But again, more important to cover the evils of cops who didn't actually do anything wrong than to cover what's actually happening in the city. So the Pennsylvania governor, Tom Wolf, he called the rioting peaceful protests. He literally said this. Okay, so here is Governor Wolf.
I'm and my staff have been in constant communication since last night with the folks in Philadelphia, and the hope is that doesn't escalate into anything more than the peaceful protests that I think this kind of situation brings out.
Oh, well, we all have hopes, don't we? We all have hopes. But those hopes were not justified. Also, as it turns out the police were told to let the looters loot. According to Jazz Shaw, writing over at Hot Air, the mayor of Philadelphia imposed a curfew last night in an attempt to quell the ongoing rioting and looting. Shockingly, many of the people who were already in the process of breaking any numbers of law did not follow the orders and set out to continue the mayhem. So, why would the looters continue emptying the shelves of all the city's stores after they'd been put on notice by the municipal government? Perhaps it's because they'd heard that the cops had been ordered not to arrest any looters. Yes, you heard that correctly. The cops were told to simply disperse the looters and not take them into custody. This comes from one of the local Fox News reporters who heard it directly from multiple police sources. Steve Keeley reporting, obtained by Fox 29 News. Directive from Philly Police Executive Team. Extremely frustrated officers, both patrol and commanders, told me overnight they were ordered not to arrest looters, just disperse them. Okay, that is incredible. That is incredible. Okay, as you may recall, Daniel Outlaw, who is the current Philadelphia police chief, took the office of police commissioner on a promise to put an end to the incarceration nation that we all supposedly live in. She's been one of the biggest proponents of the empty the jails movement in the country. In case you weren't aware of her history prior to coming to Philadelphia, she was prior the chief of police in Portland, Oregon. So, yes, it turns out that these major cities being left to the predations of local officials who do not care about rioting and looting or see the rioting and looting as justified response to the systemic evils and racism of America, that is a big story, and it's a big story in swing states, so naturally the media don't want to cover it. Facts don't care about your feelings, and it's a fact that The Ben Shapiro Show is the largest conservative podcast in the nation. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all of our content.